welcome to day 3 of the virtual SDG investment fair, which is coming to you as part of a conversation on the sustainable development goals. And we just watched a video of some success stories of entrepreneurs, and we hope we've been inspired by those videos. We want to have a conversation about unlocking money in impact funds for Ghana's development drive. Now, for Ghana to achieve the SDGs, it needs to mobilize significant investment from the private sector. The government estimates that $70 billion from the private sector is needed over the next 3.5 years to revitalize Ghana's economy. Now, impact investments are investments made with the intention to generate both a positive financial return and measurable social and environmental impact. And global impact investing has emerged as a strong asset class, and it's a $500 billion market. And we're told last year or a couple of years ago, the fund managers were very happy because they got both financial return and impact, close to 100% for both. But to access appropriate patient funding for SMEs remains a serious constraint. This panel will explore the opportunities for local and international investors to generate positive financial and social returns through investing in local venture funds. And I have a very rich panel to help us work through that. I'm going to introduce them. Matthew Buedueje is the CEO of Oasis Capital. Matthew, great to have you. Good afternoon.
Thank you. Good to be on the panel too.
Thank you, Matthew. We also have the CEO of Axis Pensions, Efriye Oware. Efriye, good afternoon.
Good afternoon, Bernard. It's a pleasure to be here.
Thank you, Efriye. We also have the Managing Director of Venture Capital Trust Fund, Hamdia Ismaila. Hamdia, good afternoon.
Good afternoon, Bernard. It's nice to be here. Actually, I'm the General Manager at Venture Capital Trust Fund.
I've raised your position, forgive me. And
may it be so.
Last but certainly not least, I have from Injaro Investments, Mirabel Moreau. Mirabel, good afternoon.
Greetings, Bernard. Great to be on this panel too.
Super. I'm going to start with Matthew, and I want you to tell us more about what Oasis Capital does, and also what your general thoughts are about the importance of impact investing within the financing scheme of things for a country like Ghana.
Thank you very much, Bernard. Oasis Capital was originally set up to provide patient capital financing within West Africa region. But as you would find, for any business, you have to begin from somewhere. So we had to focus on Ghana. And our goal had always been raising capital from both local and international community, investing the capital in growing businesses within the region or our target countries, with the view to growing the business and also making impact in respect of employment generation, economic contribution, and also protection of the environment in which we all live in. I think as a testament to environmental issues, issues of COVID, which started in one country, before we could say Jack, the whole world has caught it. So I think that is the simplest way in which we can understand the impact of environment on all of us. In terms of the second stanza of your question, as you were looking at how do we attract capital to Ghana, as I said, we have 3 different funds. 2 of them we have international investors. It's only one that we have only local investors together with ourselves. And in those fundraising, we reckon that yes, most investors would like to have financial return, but they are also interested in ensuring that your investment do make impact in our community. Why is Ghana a great investment destination? One, Ghana has a constitutional democracy. So as a minimum, everybody understands that there is a legal framework for adjudication because you are going into commercial transactions. So certainly there will be dispute, and that can be resolved with the utmost transparency that you can see. Ghana has economic policy that is an open economy, which allows market mechanism to work. So you can have easy transfer of funds to and outside the country. If dividends are earned, profit are earned, and you pay dividend, you can easily transfer your money without problem. You don't need specific permissions to do so. Ghana has a number of bilateral and double taxation treaty, which also makes the environment a bit more attractive for people, because for every investor, the ultimate goal is have sustainable return. So if I have an economy where I come from a country that has a double treaty agreement with Ghana, I know that at least I will pay tax in only one of those jurisdictions, and that is a plus. Ghana is a member of MIGA, which is multilateral organization that provides investment protection guarantee. And as a member, for those that have doubt, even in some regions within, once you're a member, you have opportunity to underwrite some of the risks that affect your investment. Ghana, the icing of the cake is that Ghana has a growing middle class, which is a key factor for the growth of any business. And we are progressively building a stronger market that offers opportunity for every strand of business within our environment. I think the key factor for any economy to develop is more of a growing middle class, because they have the purchasing power, they have the wherewithal, and they have the energy, ideas, and the innovations that you require to ensure sustainable growth and development in any country.
Thank you for that background. Let me come to Afriye. So again, tell us a bit more about Axis Pensions and your general thoughts about impact investing in Ghana.
All right. Thank you very much, Bernard. So Axis is a pensions management company that is based here in East Legon. Our mission is very simple: to inspire Ghanaians to achieve financial peace of mind. I mean, they are just about a little under 2 million Ghanaians who are included for pensions out of a working population of approximately 11 million. So our role as a business really is to spearhead financial inclusion on the pension front. And Axis is blessed to be one of the leading companies leading this charge in the pensions industry. On your second question, why is Ghana an important destination for impact investors? I think even though Ghana is still a frontier country, a frontier market, I would say, our financial market is one of the most advanced really in Africa. We have a pretty robust regulatory environment, like Matthew said. And thankfully, the private equity space is also shaping up very nicely for Ghana. And with Oasis and Indaro leading the charge and providing leadership, we've seen in the last 10 years a number of private equity firms, coming up locally. And so within the country, the ecosystem is building up. I can say we have the right complement of skill sets, to manage assets. The funding environment is also improving. Local institutional investors like pension funds are also beginning to embrace the idea of investing in private equity. And indeed, a company like Axis and some of our peers in the pensions industry have begun to allocate capital, into private equity. And I believe if these investments we have done turn out very good outcomes, chances are that we will only go up in terms of capital allocation. Yeah. And in the last few years, we've already seen a lot of private equity firms internationally doing landmark transactions in Ghana. Our company, for instance, is a beneficiary of an investment by a major international private equity firm that invested in us 2 years ago. And so there are many firms in Ghana that are already enjoying capital allocation from impact investors. And that is only a testament to demonstrate the fact that there is strong interest in Ghana. Are there enough impact opportunities in Ghana? I will say yes. I mean, the role of impact investors really is to unleash capital to tackle social and environmental challenges. And you would agree with me, Bernard, that Ghana, being a developing country, has its fair share of these challenges, from access to clean water, to quality education, affordable housing. And so there are significant opportunities. The good thing is that Ghanaians are entrepreneurial, and we are tackling these problems in our own small way. I believe with the right kind of capital and with the right kind of intentions, many of these entrepreneurs will be able to deliver good outcomes that can contribute to our economic development.
Thank you, Free. Let me come to Hamdia. So, GM for Venture Capital Trust Fund. It's an organization we hear in the news quite often. So, tell us more about what you guys do, and then your take on Ghana as an impact investing destination.
Thank you, Bernard. And really very happy to be here to be having this conversation. Venture Capital Trust Fund actually is a state institution. We were set up by law. And the idea was to catalyze the venture capital private equity ecosystem. I really participating as a catalytic investor, investing in managers so that we can build this asset class in Ghana. And so I'm happy to be sitting on the panel with one of our portfolio funds, which is Oasis. We anchored Oasis in the Oasis First Fund. And seeing Oasis go this far makes all of us happy that, you know, it is something that we need to do more. And in terms of opportunities that we have in Ghana, I mean, both Matthew and Free had talked about a lot of them, but I just want to go on venture capital private equity specific, and to say that Venture Capital Trust Fund was created to provide this catalytic capital to allow other institutional investors to come into the market. We take a first loss. So usually when you go invest with us in these funds, you are able to write off, you know, if there is a loss. So far, we have been in existence for the last 15 years. We have invested in 7 portfolio funds. We haven't lost money yet. So what I want to say is that we provide first loss capital because we provided that catalytic capital that attract other commercial investors to come in. So that is there in Ghana. You don't usually find it in most jurisdictions where government has really tried to make sure that this industry is catalyzed by providing that first loss. That aside, there are also a lot of tax incentives from the fund side. So a typical VC fund, for example, has attract only 1% tax vis-a-vis, you know, 20% corporate tax. So that is one thing that attracts. We also have some loss carry forward on the funds. For example, if you invest in a VC fund and you lose money, you can actually go and write it off on your taxes. So we have great programs in the country, and the idea is to use that to attract, you know, more institutional investors, more commercial investors, and then more impact investors, because we want to make sure that, I mean, we have issues of jobs, we have issue of youth unemployment, we have issues of, you know, health issues that generally cut across with the pandemic that has happened. We have seen that we have to put more money in the healthcare infrastructure. And I think on the side of impact in particular, we are also one of the first countries in the world that has actually launched our SDG, you know, financing framework. And the framework has given the opportunity to investors that we need about 450 billion within the next 10 years to meet the SDGs, which means that we need about $45 billion every year to be able to finance the SDGs properly. And these are opportunities for impact investors to come in, look at the sectors that are very close to your heart, and let's see how we can build together funds to really invest in these anchor sectors that deliver the greatest of impact for Ghanaians and the planet. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Hamdia. Let me come to Mirabel now. Injaro Investments. Tell us what Injaro does and what your thoughts are generally on Ghana as a destination for impact investment.
Thank you, Bernard. So Injaro is a private equity and private credit fund manager focused in sub-Saharan Africa. So over the past decade, we've been deploying capital primarily in agriculture and then looking to do other sectors now. I'm happy to announce that when I checked our numbers before coming on the panel, we have deployed $14 million in impact investment dollars in Ghana alone over the past few years. And that has gone towards helping to achieve the SDGs that we all know about. So when I look at the various indicators, and my fellow panelists have highlighted these across the economic, the political, the social indicators. When we look at Ghana, we have a fairly young population that's a competitively priced and skilled work population. It makes Ghana a very attractive destination for impact investing. We also have a growing capital market, and this is important when you start looking at exits and what happens to the investments that the impact investors deploy their capital into. When I look at some of the investments at Injaro over the past 7+ years, they really bring to bear the kind of non-financial returns that impact investment seeks. So we're looking at creating employment, we're looking at gender equality and providing avenues where companies can even contribute to climate change. We have a feed mill company in Kumasi that produces poultry feed to serve a lot of the farmers across the country and in neighboring countries. Through this particular investment, we've seen a connection of smallholder farmers into a guaranteed offtake market at great prices, so that they are not left when it comes to the development that is happening within the country. And we've seen this company go from having very little revenues to over 5x of the revenue since we started. And this has created a multiplier effect across the board when it comes again to employment and income generation. So for Injaro currently, we have 2 live vehicles in private equity and private credits that are actively working in the space. And we expect that we're able to work with various LPs, local and international, to continue deploying additional impact funds into our economy.
Thank you for that introduction. Now let me come back to Matthew. So Oasis is interesting. You have put money into different things: education, financial services, housing, healthcare, food, hospitality. So it's a broad mix, okay? Now that we are in the stability stage of a pandemic, going forward, what are some of the key sectors impact investors should be focusing on in Ghana? Because now health is a major challenge. People were out of school for a long time. Just give me your thoughts about whether the pandemic has changed or will change or should change your approach to investing going forward. Matthew, put on your mic.
Yeah. Thank you, Bernard. It's a good question. We all had to rethink our strategy and notes on in the early stages of the pandemic, that we had to, some investment that we had even approved, we had to put them on hold and come up with a new strategy. So you would find that Oasis focuses more on essential services, and essential services will always be needed, irrespective of the situation in which we find ourselves. So in our particular case, in our business continuity strategy, we did not have to necessarily change much course because we were quite heavy in the health services sector, which has become germane in this new world order. We still needed to resuscitate educational sector. Schools in Ghana were closed down for a year. When they came back, they needed some facilities and services in order to keep going, because we as human beings, we can never stop learning, and that is our future. So we need to look at all of that. Financial services thrived. The only thing is that we have to find a new way of doing that. And if you recall, you could see that even last year, a lot of financial service transactions were taken onto the cyberspace, right? So the way those businesses are done would change, but the essential services will remain the same. So you will still find investment heavily required in education, sanitation, health. We will still need to invest a lot more in innovation and technology. We still have to focus on the production of food that we will eat. And I give you an example. At the heat of the pandemic, nobody could travel. So if you didn't have the food in your country, how else were you expecting to eat? So there are certain things that are essential for us as a country that we must focus on. I mean, some of us had a little education in Europe. And one thing I learned in Europe was that irrespective of how small the country is, one thing they don't joke with is that they make sure the basic food that they eat are produced in that same country. And I think it is one important decision that policymakers and leaders of the country must all work together to ensure that as a minimum, we become sufficient in food production. And that in itself has a lot of opportunities in the processing in terms of safety, food safety and food sustainability as we go along. So capital is required in all the sectors that we need, except that the way of executing and transacting the business will be different. Just as we are having a successful meeting, but we are not meeting at the table. And you can see the benefit of it. If we met in a room, the cups of coffee and tea that we would have drunk and other people, all of that are cost savings. So we need to rethink the way things are done, and it has some positives. And I think we need to align in that direction. The world is not coming back again. It's changed forever.
So just to be clear, these investments are a mix of demand and supply driven. By that, I mean, you look at the situation on the ground and it calls for this type of investment. Other times you can say, based on what we see, we will push money into this. So it's both ways. It's not one way. Yeah,
the investments may always be thematic. And that is one of the conversations that has been going on, and say, instead of, for instance, I mean, there are other different discussions on creating other development finance institutions. What we are saying is that one development finance institution can do the same, but you can create different teams at different times within the development dynamics. So you say that this particular year, the focus is on health sector investment, and one would expect that a lot of investment will be directed at that place. And that same institution can do that at minimal cost.
Thank you, Matthew. Let me turn to Efriye. Efriye, you are in a very interesting position because you have benefited from investment funding, and now you also sit on a lot of money looking to invest it in a way that will be beneficial. But you have a problem. Your problem is that in the public, when pension funds are mentioned, people are very, very worried. In fact, last week we were reviewing the Auditor General's report, and everybody was talking about SNIT and what they use our money for. So there is a certain public unease when it comes to investing pension funds. So the scrutiny is more. So my question is double-barreled. Sitting in a position where you've received money and you're also now a trustee giving out money, what have you learned from that unique position? And then number two, how do we demystify pension fund investment? Because there's a lot of public concern about it. So use the Access example to tell us, ease our anxiety about where pension funds can be invested and where they can't.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much, Bernard, for your question. The interesting thing is pension funds, by their very nature, are impact seeking. And thankfully, the landscape has changed significantly from what we used to have 10 years ago. The private pension industry, for instance, is about 30 billion Ghana cedis in assets. SNIT, which you referred to in your remark, is just about 10 billion in assets. So really, the landscape has changed a lot more. Now depends on private pension players than on government. And as pension companies, our ability to provide long-term value to our contributors is contingent on economic performance. And so we as Access have taken keen interest in the development of alternative asset classes like private equity. And thankfully, like you mentioned, we have the history, having received investment from two private equity firms, including Oasis Capital. And so we are fortunate to have the experience of having worked with private equity firms to inform our strategy going forward. In the last 2 years or so, we have deployed some capital or committed some capital to two private equity firms. But I must recognize that we don't claim to be experts in this particular asset class. And so it's just a small proportion of our portfolio that was committed to afford us the opportunity to learn and experiment how this works. And we are also blessed to have the likes of Oasis and Injaro, who have been in this industry for close to 10 years. And in a decade, there's so much you would learn. And so we are not experimenting with firms that are just starting, but firms that have made mistakes and have learned from their mistakes. And like Access, there are other companies in our industry, who have been through a similar experience. And so we are approaching the private equity asset class with a bit of caution, but that is not to say that we don't believe in the asset class. Indeed, as pension companies, our biggest worry has been long-term inflation. And so the kind of assets that promise us inflation protected returns are private equity. And that is the reason we have started to explore this asset class. It's just a matter of time. It will grow. So our overall exposure to private equity as of now is just about 2%, but that is set to grow. I must also say that we believe private equity is the way. And I'm saying this because 10 years ago, Access was just a startup. It took the capital of Oasis and others to bring Access this far. And I believe there are many such companies out there, rough diamonds that need a little capital to push them up. And so we believe that as an industry, we have a need for strategic thinking when it comes to this asset class, but I must also recognize that there is a gap in knowledge in the industry, and the private equity players will have a job to do in educating us to a level where we'll be comfortable to invest in that asset class. But that said, it is still a bit of an asset class that is difficult to talk about. It's not one that is regularly reported. And so there isn't enough information about potential returns one can make. And so pension companies, given the benefit of investing in high-yielding government, bonds will really require a regulator's intervention. And my suggestion is companies like Oasis and Injaro should aggressively lobby the MPRA to impose a floor of at least 5% on private equity investment. And that's the only thing that will get us to allocate a lot more capital.
Interesting. Thank you very much. Hamdia, so for my understanding of what you do at Venture Capital Trust Fund, you provide credit and equity financing, but you provide it indirectly to SMEs. So you do it through what you call venture capital finance companies, right? And you've been doing this since 2004. So you have about 15 years or more of experience in Ghana. I want to know what your significant achievements have been. And then number two, I feel Ghanaians are still very, credit versus equity heavy. So we like credit, we don't like equity generally, right? So what are your thoughts on whether that's changing? In the 15 years you've been working as VCF, what have you learned about that? Is there a change in the appetite of Ghanaian companies, or we're still very credit heavy as against a mix of credit and equity?
Thank you, Bernard. My Venture Capital Trust Fund, our greatest achievement is exhibited on this panel, right? So we invested in Oasis Capital.
Okay.
Then Oasis Capital invested in Access. Nice. So that is the indirect. Because the idea of government is to promote the VC ecosystem, that is introducing the private equity venture capital type of investment in Ghana. Well, government decided that it is important that you don't take equity positions in most of these companies. So invest in funds and encourage other institutional investors to co-invest with you in these funds and make them larger. And when they are large, they can now go ahead and look for investment opportunities in small and medium enterprises. This is because you need certain kinds of expertise to do that. And you can't build a whole team that can do all these direct investments. So when you have pools of funds, the Oasis just told you that they do a lot more of essential services. Injaro does a lot. The first Injaro fund does more agri investment. So you have those specific kinds of investment. We have another investment in the Oasis that does a lot more real estate. So you are able to really do different kinds of things with small government money, but more private sector money to leverage it. So that is why it says that we do it indirectly. So we pool the funds with others and then we invest. So the achievement is on this platform. And there are so many in Ghana. We have so many portfolio companies that venture capital money has gone in. Now, one thing I wanted to say when you asked a question about demystifying pensions, you asked a free is that, private equity is private transaction. And when you are not a party to that transaction, you wouldn't know of it. And so sometimes you don't hear most of these deals, these kinds of investments going on, but it is happening in this country. We can do better, but it is happening. And so I think that is opportunity for people to begin to really be more inquisitive, to see what it is, what people are doing and how much they are making, so they can come on board. We can begin to have more education on it, but it is a private transaction, so we are not. If you are not a party to it, you may not really know. We have like I said, we have invested in 7 funds. And some are doing more light manufacturing kind of investment, which is more agriculture, agriprocessing. And just to add to what Matthew said, for me, my belief is that if you can't feed yourself, you have no business being existence. So the best thing is to make sure that you can feed yourself. And in Ghana, Ghana is very agrarian. We sit, on massive land. Agriculture provides a lot of jobs. Yet we are unable to feed ourselves. And so we do more light manufacturing investment to bring more value to what we are producing so that we can feed ourselves. So that's one of the investments that we do, we've done. So we have the Industrial Support Fund. We have supported Oasis. We have supported Fidelity. We have invested in, healthcare in this country. In fact, diagnostics, more highly specialized kinds of healthcare investments, we have done them in this country. So those are some of the achievements that we have. My thoughts on and appetite on VC. I think we are getting somewhere. When we started, it wasn't good at all. Matthew will tell you, people don't want VC investment because VC investment, you are building a chemistry, you are building a relationship. It's not debt that where a bank gives you a loan and then you go and work and you pay every month. No, VC will sit on your board, we make sure that you do the right things. We help you recruit a team and make sure that we grow the business. And some people don't like that because some people are not in business of really expanding. They are in business of making sure that they are running a lifestyle business, right? So we have had a lot of issues where people actually were approved to receive this money and they rejected it for the mere reason that the fund manager wants to take a board seat. We have moved from that stage a little bit. Most of the very early stage and startup companies coming up are open to having other people on board to support them to grow. So we are moving forward on that. And that is a great opportunity for us because the startup ecosystem is building and we need to get more funding in there to be able to create the jobs and unlock more innovation into the Ghanaian economy.
Thank you. Mirabel.
And I just also want to add the fact that we also supported Impact Invest in Ghana. And the idea of Impact Invest in Ghana is to ensure that we are actually able to direct more impact capital to where it is needed most. And you see that this panel, for example, is a partnership between Impact Invest in Ghana and the Ministry of Finance to make sure that we talk more about how we can look at unlocking more impact capital into the SME space to ensure that we deliver we achieve both the financial returns and also meet the social needs, which is more job creation in this country, and then also to benefit the planet.
Thank you very much, Hamdia, and thanks for sharing all of that information. Now let me come to Mirabel. So I know in Jaro for Agric, and I like Agric because a lot of poor people are in Agric, and Agric also has a lot of women. So Agric addresses poverty and also addresses gender imbalance. I want you to share some lessons you've learned in some of your investments across the continent in how we can increase the impact side of things. Because I think all of you guys are very good at increasing your financial returns. So you're not going to lose money for anybody, right? So I don't think there's a problem with the financial side, whether you are Matthew or Hamdia. But we are Africans and we feel, apart from getting a good return for our principals, we also need measurable impact. So share some lessons on how Injaro works with this and how you are able to get all these women and all these poor people to show that they've really been lifted out of poverty, they have an income, they are educated, and all these other things. So just your general, what is shareable? Because I know some are trade secrets. So share which one is shareable with us, Mirabel.
Thanks, Bernard. So with the Njaro team, we're sleeves rolled up to be able to create the value, to unlock the potential of the MSMEs that we're working with, and to make a difference in the communities in which we operate. We have to roll up our sleeves. So you're not going to find us in nice offices all the time in suits. You're most likely going to find us in the companies that we have invested in, helping them across all the functional areas: marketing, strategy, finance and accounting, operations, helping them to build the business block by block. It's not enough to actually just deploy the capital. That's the easy part, to have an allocation of funding to the company, but to ensure that the funds are used for the purposes for which they are allocated, and to make sure that the companies get to the next level, you have to be heavily involved. So at the board level, you seat, but more importantly, at the operational level, you are there. We've also had the benefit of having technical assistance facilities from our investors. So this was funding that is set aside specifically to help companies with areas that they are struggling in. So one of the core areas when we talk about companies in Africa is about quality and standards. Do you have ISO certification? And for our local economy, do you have FDB? Do you have GSA? So certification is expensive. It takes time, and you might not have the ability to use your core IGF for certification. So we could use their technical assistance funding to be able to help companies get certification. For instance, organic certification or ISO certification. We can also use the technical assistance funding to get other expertise. For instance, if you're a poultry farmer, to get a biosecurity expert to really help you streamline the biosecurity protocols on the farm to ensure that you don't have avian flu spreading and losing all your stock. So in terms of what we have done to be able to ensure that we can make the impact, number one, as I mentioned, is the sleeves rolled up approach of being on the ground with you, on top of being at the board with the government. The next one is the technical assistance facility. The third element is that we're very intentional when it comes to measuring impact. So it's not enough to throw funding at the business and expect that, yes, the impact will come. We go out and we measure directly by ourselves and then by third parties to make sure that we are actually making this impact. So for instance, one of our investments in the northern part of Ghana is with a share processor. When we started working with the company, most of the business was in shea butter. And over time, we have expanded more of their consumer products. I believe you know the product is Tama products, and it's widely available in grocery stores here in Ghana. And our journey with them has been quite fascinating because it involves bringing along the women who are in rural over 3,000 of them being trained so that instead of just collecting the nuts and selling openly on the market, they can be part of a network where they can get a 15% premium markets for the nuts that they collect, and then we go on to transform that into the shea butter and the finished products. It's an expectation that as this operation increases, we could do other investments with the women as well. For instance, for them to cultivate essential oil plants like lavender or have bees so that they could generate income from those activities and not from the shea nut collection as well. So those would be the three shareable themes that I would share with the team in terms of how we're making the impact.
Thank you. Now, let me just thank you all for your comments. I have a final question for you all, but I just want to remind our audience that there's a Q&A after this session, and we'll be taking your questions. So you can join us when we are done with this panel and throw your questions. Hopefully the panelists will still be here to answer your questions. And this is really our panel 1 for day 3. We have another panel coming up on investing in enterprise support organizations to drive private sector development in the SDGs. And some of the accelerators will be talking to us. So stay on for that as well. That's happening later in the day. My question is really looking forward. This is the final question to everybody. And what is the outlook? We're saying we need to raise $1 billion in impact funds for Ghana in the next few years. How optimistic are you that we're going to achieve this? So let's say by 2023, Matthew, be honest with me. What are you seeing in the crystal ball? Are we on the right path? Can we hit that 1 billion jackpot in a year?
Bernard, it's very easy. Every year did indicate that we have 30 billion in private pension scheme. And this is just from the year 2010 when we started accumulating and effectively running that. Now they have surpassed it. If we assume even 5% mandatory allocation, and I would say mandatory allocation because we are used to buying government treasury bills and bonds. So I recall when I was young at the University of Ghana, 1998, an exuberant business school graduate asked one of the former managing directors of EcoBank, Mr. Jenaka, that why are they doing lazy banking and giving all their money to government and not lending money? Because I have theoretically studied that a typical banking balance sheet, because I read banking and finance, and a classical bank balance sheet must look a certain way. So I was very critical in the business week, and he was, I think, chairing one of the functions and had given a keynote speech. So the question, he looked at me and said, young man, if you were the managing director of the school and you have 100 million cedis, which can be managed by just one desk behind your office with only two people who will just take a phone call and buy a bond, would you go and recruit 4,000 people to come and write credit report? And how else are your managers going to sleep reading all this report? What that means is that there is a rational reasoning in economics, and so long as they can make money by not doing anything, that will be the day. So if we want to do that, all we need is that government policy must move towards making a mandatory allocation, and we would be able to deal with that by providing domestic capital. For instance, in our last fund, we raised $50 million, $50.5 million. Of that amount, 35 was raised internationally, 15.5 was raised domestically. And that, for me, was a very good encouragement for those that provided us money from international sources, because we call it a skin in the game. So if I'm raising money, I'm raising $200 million, and I go to any investor and say that I've been able to raise 50 million of this from my own country, it will be much easier for other people to listen to me, because people are looking for more realistic projects to invest in. Just as we do the same. A lot of people come to me, I pack their proposal because they cannot substantiate it. And if you come to me and you have demonstrated your capacity, right, at that level, I'll be confident and I'll be willing to make investment. Afriye did indicate. We did make investment in Afriye, and it's all about the management team. They did quite well. So we exited with very good return. To date, it is one of the best return we have ever had in real IRR terms, in terms of investment that we've made. But subsequent to that, some bigger player than ourselves have come from a different country to invest in their business. So that tells you that if we domestically seed, capitalize our funds, impact funds, we would easily raise money from international community.
All right.
That is achievable.
Thank you. Afriye, are you as optimistic?
Yes, I am. I share in Matthew's optimism. As I mentioned, the private pension industry has already started allocating capital to private equity. It's just a matter of time. Our assets are growing, are doubling almost every 3 years. And so in the next decade, we expect the private pension assets to surpass 200 billion Ghana cedis. There is no way we'll have such an asset base without allocating some into private equity. I am also aware of some advocacy work that is ongoing to get the Ministry of Finance and the MPRA to consider the floor I mentioned earlier. And so all these efforts will help to increase capital allocation to private equity. We don't have a choice. Without it, we definitely will not be able to grow the real sector. So I am as optimistic as anybody else.
Thank you, Amdi. Are you already smiling? So I know your answer.
They've just made my day, you know. We have 30 billion in assets, right? Currently, the asset allocation, I know MPRA is working on a new asset allocation. We have 15% alternative asset, 10% cap in private equity venture capital. 10%, that is 3 billion. We have already achieved it. We have the money here. And as Matthew said, for those of us who work with international investors and we speak to them all the time, when you have a skin in the game, when there is an investor locally, everybody is confident to come on board. So that's it. There's development bank coming in. It's supposed to also do some wholesale kinds of investment, and they will also look at private equity. So I think that the future can just be bright, and we need to work along the line. And as we are talking about trying to get a floor for pension funds to get into private equity, that's the way to go. Other countries have done it. There are statistics across. In the US, largest pension funds all invest in private equity funds. That's how they grow the economy. That's how you grow the startup ecosystem. That's how you do investing to be able to build the economy. So it's something that we need to do. And I think that we have to act on it now. And I'm very optimistic. When I see the panel, I'm very optimistic that we are getting there and we will be there.
Thank you. Let me give Mirabel the last word.
Thanks, Bernard. You do ask an existential question. So for a bit of context, the American laws changed in about 1978 to allow the institutional investors from the pension funds to put their money into private equity. And it took them about 40 years, around 2013, to get their PE as a percentage of their assets under management to about 8.3%, 40 years. Now, when it comes to Africa and then to Ghana specifically, we have leapfrog America, we have leapfrog a lot of European countries when it comes to telcos. When it comes to our mobile technology, we're way ahead of them and we're not following the curve in terms of development. My hope and the hope of all of us involved in the private equity and impact investment space is that we're going to leapfrog them again. We're not going to take 40 years to get to, at least 8% of AUM in private equity. We expect that we should take less than a decade. As the other panelists said, there are certain initiatives that have to be put in place, especially with the government as a convener, to create an enabling environment to really push this agenda forward. We can have more tax incentives for pension fund managers such as Access, so that when they have higher allocations of their funds into private equity, they are able to have benefits to give them the peace of mind to put the money into a riskier alternative asset class. Matthew also talked about advocacy, and all of us here on this panel have been on multiple sessions educating our colleagues, fund managers in the pension space about private equity. We're doing our widow's mite. I think it will be very important going forward to have more heavy lifting from the government as well in terms of education, so that the pension fund managers will be able to understand this asset class more, even potentially have their due diligence on fund managers such as Oasis and Njaro subsidized by the government, so that they will really have the time and have the tools to help them assess their investment into private equity. So overall, we think we're going to have a lot more investments coming into PE over the next decade, and we're happy to go along for the ride and help all the pension fund managers get in as well.
Thank you, Mirabel. Thank you, Hamdia. Thank you, Efriye. Thank you, Matthew. We've been talking about opportunities for impact investing and returns in Ghana. We've tried to understand the context, and the outlook is very positive. We will yield for some questions shortly, but let me announce one more time that after this panel, there's another panel on market builders, investing in enterprise support organizations to drive private sector development in the SDGs. But if there are any questions, we will take them now. Thank you very much.
Well,